Hi, this is Justin Colletti of Sonic Scoop, and today we've got a very special guest, a guy I've been looking forward to having on for a while now, Mr. Dana Nielsen. Dana Nielsen is a producer, engineer, mixer. He does all the things, basically, and he has worked with an incredible range of artists. There's hip-hop and R&B like Rihanna, there's metal like Slayer, tons of really interesting alternative rock, Smashing Pumpkins, the godfather of grunge, Neil Young. He's worked with Adele. He worked on her smash hit 21. He's worked with Metallica, with Weezer, with Bob Dylan, a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm also going to talk to him about a couple of interesting things, including some remote recording he did with a band called Endless Field, where they went to all of these gorgeous national landmarks and made, or scenic landmarks, and made videos of every single song with a kind of minimal miking setup that I think a lot of us could learn from. And I'm really excited to talk to him about that. His working with Rick Rubin. Always like to get a glimpse of that guy's projects and workflow. So big thank you and hello to Dana Nielsen. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Killer to have you. You will probably notice, I'm going to do a quick shout out to our sponsors. You'll probably notice both of us are talking to fancy, nice microphones. They're both Jay-Z microphones, and Jay-Z are currently having a big sale where you can get practically everything they make for 50% off. So check that out at jzmic.com, and you can get free shipping during this big sale that's only this week by using the discount code Sonic Scoop. That's us. So type in Sonic Scoop, get a big discount on that stuff. Maybe we'll talk about some of your favorite mics and we'll geek out about gear a little bit as part of the episode. So we'll get into that stuff. Also, big shout out to our sponsors, Focusrite. I'm talking to a Claret Focusrite interface right now. Make great bang for this buck stuff. Haven't given me a lick of trouble. And Soundtoys, one of my favorite makers of plug-in creative mixing effects. I see a lot of nods from Dana. He's used all the things. You don't only do all the things, you've used all the things.
I love that when, the best feeling for you and for me is like when all the sponsors are like, it's actually, that's the stuff I love using.
Yes. I kind of engineered it to be that way because I don't really like shilling for stuff that I don't like. It would just make me feel weird. And the whole conversation would go after that start. So there are companies who have offered to get involved with us when I'm like, gonna have to pass. Yeah. It's rare because there's a lot of good stuff out there these days. Yeah. But it's happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get into the important stuff, which is, first of all, what have you been up to these days? We're just coming out of, well, hopefully the tail end of a long quarantine period. How have you been keeping yourself busy for these past couple of months? What's work been like for you these days?
Well, right when all the, stay-at-home orders and everything started, I had a lot of really exciting projects lined up that all were tracking situations. And so, of course, all that went away. And thankfully, now that we seem to be loosening things up and coming out, those sessions are getting rescheduled. So it was slow for a minute, maybe a week. And then a lot of other projects started picking up for mixing and writing. And I think everybody else was in the same boat, where, well, we can't do these sessions, so what else can we do, So right away, things started kind of percolating. So I've been working on a couple different film scores at the moment that I record and mix and sometimes co-produce, sometimes co-write, mainly with my friends John Now and Andrew Feltenstein from Beacon Street Studios, which is a place I work with a ton on lots of different albums and certainly a lot of music for picture.
So imagine we're seeing your home studio right now. Yeah. And it looks like you've got a pretty good setup. I think I see ATC monitors over your shoulder. Am I right there?
Yep.
And you've got some of the tube tech stuff, some distressors. Yep. We'll nerd out about gear later, but it looks like you've got a good mixing setup. What kind of desk is that behind you?
It's a 24-channel D command. With the, I think, DigiDesign badge on it. Pre-Avid.
Old school. Still works. Still controls the Pro Tools.
I love it. Before this, I had Pro Control. This thing's been so great. I really couldn't do what I do, or certainly not have as much fun doing it without faders.
Yeah, so do you do the majority of your mixing there in that room, or are certain things like the film soundtracks, are you leaving the house just to record those, or do you leave the house to mix certain projects? What's that like for you?
It's all, I mix everything here, and I've always mixed everything from my home setup here or previous houses.
About how long has that been going back that you've been doing it out of a home setup?
I mean, the the first time I ever mixed for Rick, we had a little like 700 square foot house in Santa Monica, and I had like literally like a 5x5 carpeted second bedroom. That was my mix room. And, I just worked really hard at making it sound as tight and focused in there as possible. And, that would have been like, 2004 or 5 or
now
something.
This is something that's relatable, because in a small room like that, where it's not your final or your current iteration of your mix room that you're in today, I'm sure there were some challenges. What's some of the best advice you can give to someone who's also working in a small, compromised environment like that for making great sounding records? Because if you're working with stuff on Rick Rubin, with Rick Rubin, he's not settling for second best mixes.
Right.
So what are some of the key things that allowed you to make it work at that high of a level in a space like that?
Well, for me, in that particular room, because it was, it's like the worst possible thing. You've got like, a cube, basically.
Yes. Anyone who knows acoustics knows that is bad.
Yeah. So what I did is, it was carpeted, and I basically just carpeted the walls. I went to, it was pretty fun. I don't remember anything on the ceiling. I can't remember. But basically covered the walls in like those, not the heavy duty packing blankets, but like the kind of throwaway ones you get in the bag when you rent a U-Haul,
Yes, exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I
still have some here.
Yeah. So I like stapled that everywhere, just covered like all the walls. And then, went to this like fabric shop downtown LA and picked the most like, it was really kind of a fun trick I wouldn't normally do. I remember being in this shop and I was like, I'm going to just pick maybe some patterns that I like, but a lot of patterns that I don't like. And they all have to be like loud and interesting. And they were. And I just like made a real mishmash, quilty sort of, like you walk in there and it's like, what the hell is going on?
Right. So it sounds to me like you did everything basically, I'm sorry to say this, wrong and half-assed, but got great results anyway. There's people right now listening to this who are going to be offended at how good some of your work from then sounded with all of these compromises. So I think that is just a great sign that's like, hey, Rick Rubin calls, he needs some mixing done. You make do with what you've got and you just make it happen.
Well,
so the question here is, go ahead, please.
Well, what I was going to follow up with is, I did this artist cut Neil Diamond mixes that Rick really dug. I was just doing rough mixes at the time for some edits and stuff, but he really dug them and called Neil and wanted to. He's like, I think we go with this. I think we got our guy. And then so to follow up, like that was for the 12 songs artist cut album, and then the next album that Rick and Neil did, Home Before Dark, Rick called and was like, could you mix this new one, this Home Before Dark one? And I was like, my goodness, holy cow, yes, I'd love to. And like, do you have any specific studio you want me to work at that you like or whatever? And he was like, just do it wherever he did the last one, which was my little bedroom, And so technically, I think what I was trying to do at the time was just knock down as many reflections as I could. It was extremely dead in there. And that was fine by me. And then keeping the monitor small. I still have these, the Yamaha MSP5s. I had those two and the Yamaha SW10 10-inch subwoofer, which I also still have.
Oh, interesting.
So I was able to listen and work at low volume. Of course, I can always crank it up, but in a home studio setup, there's neighbors, especially in Santa Monica, like neighbors like 4 feet away from that wall.
Yes.
But to get good results, just kind of covering those walls, covering the floor, listening at low to moderate volume, and just trying to have a focused sound without all the reflections going on. It worked.
Right.
Worked well. It was fun.
Yeah, there are the two big things to control, I guess, when you're working on a room is one, those reflections that can really mislead you as far as, especially things like applying time-based effects, things like left-right panning and localization. But the other big issue that's really hard to resolve with thin packing blankets and carpet and the like is low frequency.
Yeah, of course.
And it sounds like for a second there, I was thinking, one of the ways you're dealing with it is to not put too much low end into the room, but then you've got the sub, so you're putting low end into the room. What were some of the tricks that you developed to help you get a good sense out of low frequency? And this, by the way, that Neil Diamond record, the second one you mixed, I think that was like #1 Billboard, right?
Yeah,
that was a big one.
It was Neil's first #1, surprisingly, for the breadth of work he's done. Yeah, it was pretty wild. Yeah, I will say for the low end, what I didn't mention is I also I think 2 of the corners, only because I couldn't in the other 2 because there were doors or something in the way. I had like floor to ceiling behind the hideous patterns. I had floor to ceiling corner bass traps, like Orlex makes those,
Of course, the Leonards, yeah.
Yeah, so those went floor to ceiling, and then I just, covered them with the fabric and stuff as well. So there was at least that. But yeah, the subwoofer, I always have that on a separate button, so I can, I try to get my low end sorted without it. And then I like to, at various points throughout mixing, pop that on and see if I'm getting any, I want it to sound just like the little speakers without the sub, but with an added, octave or something like that. I don't want it to, so I'll try to get the low end right and cranking on the little speakers, and then pop in the sub and see if there's all this like crazy, thundery, flabby stuff. And then I'll be like, oh yeah, that's not how I want. I just want it to like augment a little bit so that it translates to other, other speakers.
Yeah, I get it. Now it's interesting. In your room now, I'm seeing just one set of speakers. Do you work just on the ATCs these days, or are you a multiple speaker set kind of guy?
I'm a 2 speaker set. I still have that exact same sub on a button. I have the Avocet here I've been using for years. So there's a little mode where you can keep your sub on one of the speaker selects, and it's additive to whichever other pair you want. I used to do Proax for many, many years and dig those. I still have my pair of those. They're not hooked up at the moment. And then I'm looking over here because over there I have these little realistic, like Radio Shack powered speakers that my dear friend McKay Garner gave me probably in like 2001, like as a birthday gift or something. And McKay's an amazing engineer and songwriter and everything, producer. And I've used them ever since, every day, and I probably do half of my mixing on those, And I keep them off to the side, and they're pushed together, and so they're mono. And it's just a really helpful tool to you don't have too much, you don't have really much low end at all. You don't have a lot of top end, so it's just that like mid-range focus, and it's mono, so I'm not getting distracted by, and it's over there, so I'm not like, when you're trying to put a balance together, it's so easy to get lost in like, oh, there's too much low end on that thing, or oh, that's pan too far over here, or like just sort of get lost in that stuff. And I love to, by way of pushing them mono and also having them like, it sounds like they're coming from a different room, basically. You can really get your balance together and find the power where you need it.
Yeah, you focus on what really matters so much more than being distracted by all the lush bottom and top and all that stuff. I totally get it. Yeah. I've always liked Oratones for that, but I know that so many people have used so many different types of consumer devices throughout the ages, and it's almost, as long as you get to learn it and learn how it sounds in your room, you can kind of do it on almost anything that really works well for you. Yeah. So great. Maybe we'll later on, if it's possible, maybe we'll take a little 360 tour around your room and see them if it's feasible with your setup. But we'll save that for later if it can happen.
Yeah, it'll be a little messy, but
yes, I know. We've got such a beautiful shot here that you set up. I don't want to interrupt it right now. We've got the plant, we've got the speakers, I've got the meters. This is good. Not everyone brings the full aesthetic framing vision that you have, which I appreciate. I also noticed that just inside the shot are your blue headphones. I have a pair of blue headphones here. Do you use headphones as a mixed reference at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I listen on headphones all the time in my day-to-day life. I don't mean like, and these are awesome. My longtime friend and mentor, Greg Fiddleman, turned me onto these years ago. And they're killer. They're totally falling apart.
So are mine. I had to get new ear cups. I had the same thing happen. And I try not to hold them on screen too long so people don't see.
I know.
But every once in a while I have like a little flake in my hair. From
and my wife and daughter know, that they know what it is now. And it's always like, Dad, you got headphones stuff on your neck or your ears. Yeah.
But it happened over many years. Yes. I think I had these at least 5 years before that happened. But it's time for me to get new ear cups. Yeah. I think they make replacement ear cups.
I'm told they do.
Yes, it looks a little complicated to put them in. We'll have to do a video about that on Sonic Scoop sometime.
Oh, that'd be great.
Replacing the ear cups on. Blue, if you're listening, sponsor an episode. I'll talk about how great your headphones are. You sent me new ear cups, and I'll show people how to change them.
Yes.
Okay?
Include me on that little...
All right. Yeah. I will tag you.
Because I do. They're awesome. And I do listen on AirPods all the time. Usually after, late at night, I'll shut everything down and kind of go through... the day's work. When I'm done working, I listen to the work. It seems ridiculous. I'm sorry, but I'm sure you can relate.
Absolutely, absolutely, dude.
So yeah, I'd always want it to feel magical and right and interesting in headphones. It's not where I start, but before I print anything, and for a long time, and I haven't done this in a while, but I would always. Do my mix prints in headphones, just like and I'll lay on I definitely do this still. I'll usually these days when I'm printing something, I'll put it on those little realistics. I'll lay on the floor with a pillow, whatever, and just kind of like get away from the screen. And when I do this with headphones, it's the same thing. I'll have them on a long cable. I'll lay down on the floor, just kind of like let it all wash over me. And so often, I mean, at least, once or twice each time, I think I'm at that printing part and I'll be on the floor and like listening. And then some reverb tail has like, too much low end in it, or, the pre-delay isn't right, or those ear candy headphone things, and I'll just pop up and be like, oh, darn, and hit stop and dial that in.
That's brilliant. I don't think you're alone in that. I think so many of the best guys I know mixing have a similar part of the process near the end where I always like to say, my saying for it is, sometimes you do your best mixing when you're not mixing.
Yeah.
When your hands are off the controls and you're actually just listening and taking note of things. I love to do with a piece of paper. I sit down on a couch in the back, lay down, and I just have like a piece of paper. I know Bob Power does that as well. And there's just, there's something to be said for stop fiddling for a second and just listen to it like a listener, and then come back. Yeah. And at the end of the whole thing, you have a clear picture of what needs to be tweaked.
Absolutely. I do the same thing with the paper. And I do that same process anytime I'm comping vocals and again when I'm tuning vocals. If I'm really trying to make sure that the performance is as natural as possible, which is usually my MO, of course, unless it's trying to be like a T-Pain type of vibe, or
right.
I like to lay down or sit on the couch or whatever, and with the paper and the lyrics, and just circle the words or phrases that seem out of tune, or pull my ear out of that comfort zone, or timing things, and then use that as my roadmap and like force myself to only fix those things, Yes. Because otherwise, when you're sitting there in front of it and you've got the whole performance loaded into Melodyne, and it's so easy to just be like, oh, I'll do it here. Oh, yeah, well, now that sounds weird. And then just...
zoom in, tweak everything, and it becomes more about what you're doing to it rather than how the performance is and how you can help it. I totally get it. Hey, so this mixing, would you say that the mixing job you got with Rick Rubin on that Neil Diamond stuff, were those some of your first big breaks in mixing? Yeah. Or did you have, gotcha. So how did you first connect with Rick, and what was it like working with him and taking direction from him?
Oh, it's always been amazing. I think we started working together in like maybe 2003 or something like that. That was by way of my dear friend and mentor, John Hanlon, who I still work a lot with. I just talked to him today, he's Neil Young's co-producer for many, many, many years. And how I end up working with Neil is through John. He called me in. John was working on a project for Rick and John and I already knew each other from before. I got my start in, my wife and I moved to LA in 2000 and fresh out of college. And I had a series of jobs for the first couple of years, first at Guitar Center in Hollywood and then Westlake for the sales division.
I always love a good guy from Guitar Center makes it story. So you're giving hope to all the thousands of music store employees across the world. I was a Sam Ash music store employee in year 2000, something like that. And
crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to, move to such a major city and music city like this and just like, where do I sign up to be a record producer?
Get in line, buddy.
Yeah, get in line. So, but I did have some very timely education at Loyola University in New Orleans before this. I was a jazz major, saxophone player, but I really, really fell in love with the studio there and the studio classes and electronic music classes and really discovered that I wanted to do that, And the school had just invested big time in all the latest at the time, like 24-bit 888s and stuff like that. And so I've been using that stuff a lot. And then it really worked out well because here I was, this like young dude and in the era when like everybody was switching over to Pro Tools, all the big film lots, all the big producers, whether before they were on like the big Sony machines, or maybe they're using like ADATs or like DA88s or any number of things. It just was sort of like a Pro Tools revolution. And I knew how to work it well and how to put them together. And like Guitar Center actually sent me to Digidesign for like a week training and stuff. So I would basically I was less doing sales myself and more doing sales support, technical support for the like real high end sales people who, what's now become GC Pro, but
right.
So anyway, I did that and then did a similar job freelance for a few years at Westlake for their sales department. And that's where I met John. And here's how.
All right, yeah.
So John and I knew each other and had a great friendship and rapport through like me helping him with his first Pro Tools setup. And and I used to always like nag him friendly, like let me get on a gig with you, man, And then anyway, eventually that nagging paid off and he invited me to come help out at Rick's home studio when he was in Hollywood. And it was amazing, and met Rick, and then...
That's a theme that has come up with a lot of people I've talked to, that charming nagging has been a big part of their success. Learning to nag and be persistent while still being likable. It's tricky, but if you can strike that balance, it definitely works. Yeah. What were the very first kinds of gigs you were getting with him at his studio? What kind of stuff was he having to do to help
you
out?
know what? The very first, aside from the project that John was doing, which just lasted about a week, it was at the tail end of mixing, and that was so fun, and I learned a ton, and it was just awesome being at Rick's home and studio there. And then there was like a long time where I didn't do anything with Rick, but his production coordinator at the time, Lindsay Chase, had expressed interest in like, can you come back and maybe catalog some of these reel-to-reel tapes, that all these, I remember, I can picture it clear as day. That studio is so cool, and I spent so much time there in the coming years. But, there'd be like 2-inch reels of, Blood Sugar Sex Magic and, Jay-Z and like all these, Beastie Boys and like all these things like just on a shelf, down and it's just so crazy to like look at this stuff and like I have chills now just thinking about it.
Yes,
so, of course,
and you're getting to hear and digitize some of these multi-tracks.
No,
that might be good. No,
that would be cool. Basically what she had inquired about never happened. I never ended up doing that catalog work, but I would, call her every once in a while, every month or so, and like, hey, it's Dana. Remember I did the, can we?
Yeah.
So there's a bit of that for a long time where she'd be like, oh, I totally remember you and what we talked about. Things are just too crazy right now. Call me again in a month. at some point, maybe 9 months later, she called and asked if I would assist Greg Fiddleman on that Neil Diamond 12 songs record.
Right. And this was in the studio tracking with Neil Diamond?
Yeah. It was a brand new project. They were about to start. It was at Neil's Archangel recording studio on Beverly, which is incredible. So yeah, I remember that at that moment, I was just like, holy cow, like, are you kidding? I would love to. So for many years, I did a lot of assisting and learning, mentoring, or apprenticing rather, with Greg Fiddleman and Andrew Sheps, Ryan Hewitt, Dave Schiffman, all these people who are dear friends of mine who have, taught me so much along the way. And then, it's so bumpy, like where, I started being an assistant and then, on this Neil Diamond album, and then like a year later, all of a sudden I'm mixing this new artist cut version of it. And it's like, holy cow, I'm making it, and then I'd be assisting for a while. And then I started editing. That was on I think that started on System of a Down, Hypnotize and Mesmerize. I was assisting Dave Schiffman again at Rick's studio in Hollywood when he was there, and heard that they needed an editor for vocals and putting drum takes together and, corrective type of stuff. And they were having trouble finding somebody. And, again, the sort of polite nag, I'm like, ooh, pick me, like I could totally, I know what you're looking for and I know how to do it. Let me have a shot at it. And so that kind of like, Dave was like, all right, let me fly this up the flagpole, see what we can do, And it worked out. So then I was editing a ton on lots of different albums, for a long time. Chili Peppers and Adele, like I comped all those vocals. And
do you think that process of getting to intimately hear other people's multi-tracks in that way had an effect on your approach to either recording or mixing? What were some of the lessons that you learned from diving under the hood of some of those high-level productions?
I mean, better yet, I typically would be hired to assist or second engineer, and then once the material would load up and like, okay, well, we've got a ton of band takes now, and now we're getting into vocals, then I would splinter off into another room and work on comping band takes while they're doing vocals, and then I most always would get to be a part helping out the lead engineer, dialing sounds or placing microphones. And so it was even better than just seeing under the hood. Like I was, assisting building the car, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I would just learn so much, through watching those awesome engineers get sounds and where they place mics and how aggressively they, use EQ or dynamics or just total like paid apprenticeship.
Yeah.
It's very fortunate and so fun. And I utilize all those experiences every time.
I'm curious, working, because you've done a bunch of projects that Rick was involved in. I'm curious to get your insights into what has made his projects over the past, 20 years so successful, because there are so many, great legacy artists that other producers might have failed to turn around and make relevant again today. Not everyone is going to help Johnny Cash or Neil Diamond become relevant again to people 20 years later, but he's able to do that, not just with legacy artists.
Right.
What do you think it is that makes him so successful? Is it team building? Is it song selection? Is it communication? Like, what are some of the things that stand out to you on those projects compared to other projects you've worked with other producers?
Oh, well, although I wouldn't have used any of those words that you just rattled off, those are all great. The team building, help me remember what you just said. Team building, a song selection, and what was the other one you said?
I said communication was the other one that jumped out to me.
Those are great.
Yes.
And those are all true. Team building, with regard specifically to Rick and how that's different, he picks the team. The studio, the engineer, the mixer, they're people either he's used to working with. Not to say that he tries new people all the time. He's not afraid of that. But there's definitely a solid team that knows his workflow and how to get results that he'll dig. Song selection for sure. He's just great. I mean, the overall answer to your question is it's just his intuition on things is really unique and solid, and that's why I think he's successful. He's got
I've heard that his approach is both somewhat hands off and also somewhat decisive when he's hands on and making decisions. If you're mixing something, or choose whatever example you want, is he doing a lot of communication directly to you, or is it kind of layered through multiple parties? Like, what's that process like?
It's all direct. We usually, for mixing stuff, we tend to always get together. Like he prefers to do it in person, which I think is great. There's a lot that can be lost in translation.
Yeah. And is that the actual mixing process in person, or the review of the mixes?
Review. Yeah. Gotcha. I tend to do all the mixing on my own by myself. And then, we usually get a batch of them together and then, when the house was there, like I'll drive up to Malibu and, sit with him. We'll talk about stuff, listen together, which is great too, because then I get to hear it on the speakers that he's listening on, which I would not be able to afford. At home.
What's his setup over there?
Well, it's gone now, but like really awesome high-end like monoblock amps, and I think he had like these Magico speakers that were just like crazy. Sure. He's always had he'll change it up all the time too, or every couple of years, and he's a real into hi-fi, and we'll go to those hi-fi shows and listen to all these new speakers and amps and all kinds of stuff. I mean, he's always very curious and wanting to A/B things, whether it's mixes or speakers or when to hit the bridge. Is it after the second chorus or is it right away after the first? He'll just be like, let's hear both, and see what it's like. So yeah, all that stuff is in person. Eventually, when it gets close enough, it'll be more texts or things like that.
Once the core of the vision is established, then little tweaks and revisions can happen. In other ways.
Totally.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Now, we've been talking a lot about mixing. We've been talking a lot about working on some of these projects with Rick. I wanted to talk a little more about tracking, which is something that hopefully we can all start getting back into. And I think a good insight into that is, what's the most essential? And I think this Endless Field record that you worked on that is, I think, just come out is a good kind of case study in that, because it's one of these situations where you're not working in all of these fancy studios. You're going out into the wilderness to record in a fairly minimal way, mostly acoustic-y instruments.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about, for those who don't know, the instrumentation of Endless Field, and in your own words, what made this particular project unique and interesting?
Oh, man. This project is like the epitome of unique and interesting. Endless Field are two friends of mine, Jesse Lewis on guitar, he and I went to Loyola together, and Ike Sturm on bass, acoustic bass, usually upright, although he also has like an acoustic, I can't remember what he calls that guitar. It's like an
acoustic electric bass guitar.
Yeah.
Like you might see on like a Nirvana Unplugged or something.
Yeah,
one of those things.
But it's some version that is rare and interesting.
Right.
Anyway, and Jesse on guitar on the Endless Field project, it's all acoustic guitar. And it's instrumental music. They both will play like foot percussion. I mixed their previous, I think their first album, which was essentially the same duo, but all in a studio with lots of, guests and stuff like that on voice or, trumpet or saxophone or piano. So the first album is super lush and studio, and it's a duo album with a lot of extra people. So shortly after mixing that, which was maybe 4 years ago or something like that, they immediately kind of got into this new idea for the new album, which just came out the 12th, where they wanted to keep it completely just the two of them and record all of it outdoors in the like remote wilderness.
Yeah.
And, you know, and they're like, is that something you'd be down to work with us on? And we're not going to do it like right away. Like they had a real long-term plan. I think we started planning like a year and a half to 2 years in advance. And it was crazy because power, like,
right.
How do you do this, you know? And
you were trying to do this mostly with like solar and sustainable power or something. Wasn't that like a lot of part of the project?
Yeah. I mean, to fast forward after, you know, months and months and months and months and year of testing, we landed on this Goal Zero battery, which is like a big car battery size, and has outlets and USB and really awesome piece of equipment. And they make batteries of lots of different sizes for, you know, as long, however many watts per hour. I can't remember how you measure it.
Is this a solar battery specifically, or is there like a solar thing and then a battery that are two separate components?
Oh, no. Well, they're the same. It's the battery, but there's also, and we used it a ton, which was amazing. There's a solar array on a long cable that you can plug into it, and then you're able to, you know, it was great for us because we'd want to position ourselves, if possible, at least me and my buddy Philip Broussard, who co-recorded this with me, we'd want to be in the shade, you know? And so it's great to have this long line to like run this big solar panel thing out into the sun. And that would like continuously regenerate the battery. So it's like an accessory you can get for the battery, and it was pretty amazing.
So how many things were you running off of that battery, and how long would you have to go to be able to capture all this stuff just off this solar powered battery?
What we discovered is, well, I'll tell you about the rig. It was, you know, MacBook Pro. I got one of those new Apollo X8 Pre's, which was phenomenal. I'd used some of the Apollo stuff before, but I'd never owned one of those, and never like the brand new iteration of them. That thing was awesome. And then brought some speakers, brought those MSP5s, the Yamahas.
All right.
Which we didn't use remotely because they drew too much power, but were really helpful coming back to the house every night to listen down to stuff. Brought along a stage box. And then, of course, you know, there's phantom power, all that stuff. What we found out
How many...
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, how many mics were you using in a setup like this? Because we're doing a bass player as either on an acoustic bass or an upright bass, acoustic guitarist, and then we're trying to get a sense for the natural environment that we're in. How many mics set up would make sense for this kind of thing?
8, I think, including...
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, I think that's what we were using based on the hardware, the pre's we had available. We used all the UA, you know, the Apollo pre's, and didn't EQ or compress anything going in. We did it all at 24-bit 192K.
Can you give me a sense for what the input list would have looked like for those 8 channels?
Yeah. I can't remember exactly which numbers were which, but it would be like, you know, bass mic, bass DI, which we didn't always take. In fact, I think after the first couple of days, we seldom used any DIs, or we'd record them for safety or something like that. Guitar mic, guitar DI, and then usually 2 percussion mics. There's hand percussion and also like a little kick type of thing on some of them. And then the stereo AEA R88 that I brought that you can see in the video. It's like all I'll get into the mics in a sec. wind was a huge thing. We had to really figure out how to keep the wind out of these mics. And,
Right. And I imagine with ribbon mics, that's even more of a challenge
totally.
too.
And we didn't have, we couldn't figure out any like, what do they call them? Like blimps or whatever. You can cover these big mics, with this fuzzy,
like
furry.
a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had all that together from their previous experiments for all the direct close mics.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to find some furry pop filter that, and if you look at the videos, you'll see what I mean. All the mics look pretty covered up, especially that R88. We ended up like covering it in foam, and which looked hideous but worked really well. And surprisingly,
did you keep it out of the shot? Because there's some beautiful shots here.
Oh no, you'll see it. It's in there, and then we covered it with like black pantyhose or something like that, just so it wasn't. You'll see, but that thing honestly is probably 50% of the sound on a lot of these.
Right. How far back would you position that?
As close as possible, while still getting a full image of them, because it's like, even though we ran it through a cloud lifter for a bit of like hotter output and everything, the instruments are quiet. It's like very quiet,
especially in the grand scale of nature.
Right. If you even where we would run our snake, back away from them, we couldn't hear them playing at all. From like if we took headphones off, it's like it's so quiet. A like delicate acoustic guitar and acoustic bass instrument out in a like field of wheat. you can't even hear it. So the farther away from them that we would position that stereo mic, just brings up like noise and wind, and sort of signal to noise gets pretty crazy in that environment.
And what were the close mics for the other 50% of the tones you were getting?
Okay, so I just gotten hip to these Jay-Z mics, which are super cool. And right away I was like, I want to bring these on this trip. I guess I usually had the Black Hole as Jesse's close guitar mic, and this V67 as Ike's close bass mic. And then of course just a couple, DIs for each of them as needed. And then the percussion mics tended to be, I brought my Gefell UMT 70s. Those were useful. I also brought my trusty Octava MK012s, the little.
Oh, sure, man. Those I remember when those were the thing to have.
Yeah,
it was getting them modded and stuff.
Yeah, and I bought those back when I worked at Guitar Center. When they
were
just
like
came
the
out.
affordable small diaphragm condenser, right? That people kind of had to have.
Yep.
It's amazing how far mics have come and just how much the quality has gone up over the years for similar price points.
Yeah,
but
I will say, man, I've had incredible results with those things, and they're beat up. They got like tape residue all over them, and the foam in the box is all crumbly and nasty and everything, But I use them a lot, and I'm always like, sounds great. I've even shot them out against KM 184s, and the KM 184 sounds better. It has a nicer top end, but it's not. I mean, for the price difference, it's like, come on. Yeah. Hey, Cora, don't do that. Also, sorry, my daughter and wife and
hello,
and our neighbors are like hanging out right outside the studio. The studio, like, there's a window here, but there's also like sliding doors that go out to our patio out there. And I find it funny that during this chat with you that no less than 5 people are out, like right outside the studio playing with a Barbie Dream House.
All right.
I'm like,
it's a good backdrop.
Could you guys go somewhere else, please? But yeah, so I think those were all the mics, and then the R88. And like I said, we had the ability to do which I love, with the console UI console app to like print through, and that's part of why I decided on that piece to bring on this trip because, it's small and I could do any EQ and compression that I'd want, like before, in the console app before it hits Pro Tools. But really, we didn't end up doing any of that. Like, it just sounded awesome, just clean. And those pre's are super quiet. And the 192K capabilities, it was just like, this sounds awesome. So...
to a degree, I mean, right mics, right mic selection, right placement, right players, and so much can happen.
Yeah.
I mean... And I get the selection too. The black hole on acoustic guitar, it's slightly more kind of clear and transparent and open. And then that V67, which is a lot like my Amethyst here, just a little bit fuller. It's got this little lift up in the lows and a kind of softened top. And just picking the right complement for the right sources is big. And I'm curious, since you recorded in so many different environments, I think like every song was like a different natural backdrop.
Yeah.
Did you hear the acoustics change from location to location, or is it surprisingly consistent because there's so few reflections out in nature? What were you,
did you find
in that department?
The latter, except for, of course, there's some stuff like recorded in Slot Canyon that had its own natural, amazing reverb. But aside from that particular instance, the lack of reflections is crazy.
Yeah.
And so I'd say that the thing that changed location to location sonically was like the surroundings.
Right, the background noise, kind of like whether there was crickets versus frogs versus wind versus...
They're like waterfall, creek, crickets, bees, flies. It's so cool. Some of our favorite moments are like, in a song, I can't remember which... It happens on a couple songs where around that AEA, as like a song's fading... and you're hearing like a little burbling brook, and then like a fly or a bee goes like, and it's like so trippy in headphones or whatever. And
I believe it. Cool, man. Well, this just from the photographs, it seems like an amazing project. I've got to listen through more of it. I know they're coming out with like a video for each song. Are all of those out now, or are they still coming out?
The videos are all out yet. There's definitely 2 videos, and then I think they have a plan to roll them out month by month for the rest of the album. There's one of the ones that is available. Is this one that we did? It was so treacherous. The whole thing was very treacherous, and
everyone's got their limbs though. You've got all your fingers still.
Yes.
No bear attacks.
No.
Okay, good.
We did have a constant fear of tarantula hawk wasps, which is a thing I didn't know existed.
Tarantula hawk wasps.
Yeah, and
these are wasps that embody both the danger of tarantulas and hawks within them. Is that the idea? Or
well, yes, in a very real, visceral fear response. But I think they're called that because they mostly eat tarantulas. They sting a tarantula, and their venom is so poisonous. I think it paralyzes them, and then while they're paralyzed, they suck their brains out. It's something like out of a sci-fi movie. If you look, anyway.
First murder hornets, now this is a terrible world we live in.
Yeah. But okay, so it was tricky because we were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us until I had to come back after the first 3 or 4 days getting things going, and then Philip Broussard, my dear friend, who I work on a lot of stuff with, did the following. I think it was 2 weeks, and but we'd have to hike all this gear in: video gear, audio gear, instruments, and each of these locations. We'd drive 40 minutes or so from the Airbnb or whatever, and then we'd have to hike in 20 minutes or so for each trip, 20 minutes in, drop that off, 20 minutes back, pick more up, 20. So and it was hot. So
I believe it. Some people do that for fun, but usually not studio guys.
Right. It was awesome. Everybody was so down for the cause, and it was coming out so cool. But what I'm saying is one of these that is out that people could check out is this one that we did again in a slot canyon, but not one that had what you were enclosed on the sides. It was just kind of you couldn't get very far into the slot, and it was more than 100 feet up, up this like near vertical like wall. It was super like scary carrying.
We gotta see this. We'll put some links in the show notes below to this stuff so people can click right over to. I might even be able to put someone up on the screen for those people who are the video version of this.
Let me show you at least the shot of this one, because you can tell it's like 100 feet because it took me and Phil couldn't. There was nowhere for us to set up, a recording station that high up on this like totally little tiny ledge that they were standing on. So we set up 100 feet down, which was the length of our snake, and you can see that the snake is like taut, and then we set up this little tent, to keep us somewhat out of the sun. It was crazy going up and down that. That one's Heart. So I'll send you a link on the side here. Super interesting, and the camera crew, Christopher Georgia and Brandon Sargent, were just incredible, and intercutting drone shots and multiple cameras fixed and also like kind of moving. They get these great pans and handheld, and to boot, it was like everybody's just so much fun. We had just such a blast working hard together.
That's a big part of the most memorable projects for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, man, I've had a great time talking to you so far. We're coming up close to our hour mark, and I don't want to take up your whole day. You've been so generous with your time. I want to get the last few nerdy gear questions. Sure. I'll be crucified if I don't ask. First of all, I've been like to inquire, right next to these delightful succulent cacti that you have above your bridge, there is this robot-y stomp boxy looking thing. Does he do anything sound-wise?
He sure does. And gosh, that's funny you mentioned that. That's another McKay Garner gem in my life. That's who I mentioned about those realistic speakers. This is something that he gave to me at some point. I think it's called a thingamagoop. And I hope that the batteries in here still work. It's like...
is that a light or a microphone on top, or what is that?
It's a light. Oh, the batteries are going to die. Come on, buddy. So this thing is basically an optical sensor in the nose.
Oh, great.
It'll work for any lights that you have, but in case you don't have a light, they include his handy little like... his own light, so you can kind of put this here. I think the batteries are just dead, but basically this is like an oscillator for the strobe, and these affect how fast the oscillator goes. This is your volume. This is a little speaker, and then there's a 1/4 inch out, so you can record your craziness.
Sweet. I'm gonna have to look that up so we can hear it.
Thingamagoop, I believe, is what it's called, and the dude's still making them. It's great. I gotta put new batteries in this. So this is just one of my like little studio buddies that stays out here.
And then you have mostly a digital setup here. I mean, you've got your D command there and all that, but you do have the Tube Tech. It looks like an SSL style bus compressor at the top there, a distressor, and then below, I think I might have seen a Pull Tech. What's in that bottom rack?
Yeah, down there is EQP1A.
And is there a Fern below that? What's that red one?
The red one is a it's called it's a TF Pro. Edward the compressor. It's a pro.
Oh yes.
It's a prototype before the actual release that they did, which is blue and has some different names of compressors for copyright reasons.
Right.
And this is one that Ryan Hewitt was testing and turned me on to, and I was like, back when we were working on Stadium Arcadium.
So with this mostly digital setup, why do you find yourself using those things on the hardware pieces on these days, if anything?
And then I've got 1176, Aphex, and over here there's an NTI and a couple Vintech Neves. I've got a couple of vintage
Vintex.
Yeah, those are also
you don't see a lot of those. I had at least 4 to 8 channels of Vintex in my tracking day, and they were some of the better sounding clones out there. Yeah.
These were also, that Vintech is also an early Guitar Center employee purchase.
Yes, mine was a Sam Ash employee purchase. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Up top, the ones I use the most are my favorite. The couple of vintage Neve 31102 mic pre EQs. That's what I'm. This mic right now I have going through 31102 and then Distressor and then Pultec.
Is it possible you're on a laptop where you can give us a little slight rotational tour of the rest of the stuff?
And I say
Since
try.
we're wrapping up here, it's okay.
Yeah, just because there's precarious cables for my.
All right.
My setup for today's thing.
If all of a sudden you go dark, we'll know why.
Exactly. So let's see. And it's a bit of
just a slight swivel.
Bit of a mess over here. I can't tell what I'm showing you.
All right, yeah. You got some keyboards there. What's that one on the bottom? Is that like it's not a Wurlitzer.
It is. It's a vintage 140B Wurlitzer, which is like more the Ray Charles model, as they call it.
Yes.
So it's got a much more buttery sound.
Mm-hmm. So do you do any production and tracking and arrangement here?
Absolutely.
That kind of stuff?
This is my booth, so to speak. It's not isolated, but and then I'll show you.
And is that one of your saxophones back there from the jazz days?
Oh yeah.
Do you still play it all?
Absolutely.
Oh great.
I still play quite a bit. Saxophones, and let's see if I can move this here. Guitars and harp.
Sweet. Is any of those back there a melodica, or are they just little keyboards?
There's a melodica.
And is that a Rode NTK on your couch?
It sure is.
Yeah.
It sure
See,
is.
The eye.
Yeah,
once
man, good eye.
Once a retail audio guy, always a retail audio guy, I guess.
There's
and the Barbie thing, which is diffuser, I'd imagine.
Right.
And the telescope. More studios should have telescopes.
What else do we see here? Yeah. The bathroom.
Gotta have that.
Yeah, and all the acoustics. I know I'm off mic here. I apologize.
I can boost it.
Acoustic treatments, all designed by the late great Vincent Van Hoff and Jacques Lacroix. So I have this shovel, as they call it here.
Sweet, and, you got some asymmetry going on around the non-parallel situation going on, which is nice. Yeah.
And then these side polys for side reflections and
good.
I love it here. It's like very, very comfy for me to get lots done here, and I love it.
Seems like a fun little magical place to work, and much better than a 5x5 room with packing blankets all over it.
That's right. It's funny. I can't believe you noticed that Rode NTK. I have to say, I had loaned that. I haven't used that mic in years. That was also an employee purchase.
Yep.
And I have a vintage U67 that I use a lot.
Yeah, you're going to use that more than an NTK probably.
But a drummer friend of mine across the street was curious about wanting to get a condenser mic or a tube mic, and I was like, I have this one I haven't turned on in ages. If you want to just try it out for a while and see what you think. So I got it out of storage for him, and he used it for months and months and months and months. And then at some point I was like, did you ever get a mic? And he's like, oh, I did, and I was, send that one back over. And because he'd sent it back over, I was like, well, let me just make sure this still sounds like it's supposed to and all that stuff. And anyway, I was testing it, and I actually took it off to put this one back on. Nothing's great,
Yeah, they're somewhat bright but somewhat rich at the same time, and they were again from that era where there was not a lot going in the world of, I don't know if it was $500 or $600 microphones, and there were not a lot of choices, and it was like one of the better ones at that point. Yeah. And now there's just such a plethora of mic choices in that range.
Yeah.
But it was an early pioneer, and
totally.
Can you get a good sounding condenser that like the average person could afford?
Absolutely, and it still is that. I'll just say, maybe in closing, to that point, like, I love gear, and I love, vintage gear and fancy gear and new gear and old, like I have all my favorite go-to things, if I'm going to work with, some amazing singer, I'm gonna who has a voice for it. Like I'll probably want to use a like vintage Elam 251 or something, going through this insane chain. But I'm totally not like snobby about like it has to be that. I've learned enough to and worked in enough studios, big fancy studios and small project studios and composer studios, and they all have such a variable wide variety of gear, and there's so much awesome stuff, like I never...
The quality, absolutely. The quality you can get today without going insane is just another level than it used to
Absolutely.
be. I mean, I look at something like this Amethyst, which is like, I think they're like $1,200, and then they'll sometimes have them on sale for like half price, a few times a year. They actually have one right now. I'm going to work this into a plug.
Nice.
Go to Jay-Z Mike's, you get half off SonicScoop.com. You get the Sonic Scoop discount code will get you free shipping. But for a lot of people, having a microphone that costs, $600 or $1,200 plus another $3,000 in their pocket or to put into other things is going to be a better choice than going right towards the Neumann U87 or going right towards trying to get, a vintage 67. And for the majority of people probably listening to this, there's something to be said for, hey man, $600 or $1,200 in a microphone, you're going to be pretty good, and throw some of that other cash towards a little bit of acoustic treatment, some instruments, some other things, because even right now, if I had to choose between a couple grand and this and a U87, since I don't do much recording these days, me personally, I'm going to go for this and a couple extra grand.
Yeah.
If I was doing a ton of recording and I absolutely needed the Neumann badge, I thought I was going to attract clients, and you have to make that decision for yourself. But for so many situations, a vintage U67 is absolutely nice to have. Is it a requirement to have to make great sounding records? I think we both know the answer to that question.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I get excited for anything, if the music's awesome and I believe in your project and you want to do it at your studio with like, a bunch of dynamic mics and a Mackie, like I'm in.
There have been great records made that way.
I'm not afraid of, wacky or unconventional or, subpar or like, consumer grade or whatever you want to call it,
Prosumer. I think the prosumer market is huge these days.
That's
where it's like you can do professional work but spend like a consumer. Man, this has been great. It's gone to a lot of great places. I really appreciate the conversation with you. We've taken more than an hour of your time, so I want to let you go for the day, get back to that beautiful family of yours, whatever other work you got to do.
Thanks, man.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to do the last shout out to our sponsors. They were, again, Jay-Z Mike's. You can get this mic or the mic that you're talking into for like half off at jzmikes.com. And if you want to enter the code Sonic Scoop, you'll get free shipping too. And this is only good for this week. It'll probably be over this sale by just a little bit into the weekend. So definitely get on that. Also, Focusrite making really amazing interfaces. I'm talking to a Focusrite interface right now. They make great bang for the buck stuff.
I have one too.
You have one. All right. What kind do you have?
I have the 6i6 for my system sounds and for my sampling and Ableton and any, it's great. And I recommend their stuff all the time.
Sweet. Yeah, I have a Claret 2 Pre here they sent me. I've been recording every episode of the podcast through it. And I think my brother has had 2 generations of the Scarletts for his portable stuff. It's probably the most popular like interface ever made, the little Scarlett. Like that's been the first interface for so many people. And then, I mean, I know Focusrite from being a high-end brand back in the day. And they still do make high-end stuff. The Red Series and stuff like that. So a lot of great stuff there. And last but not least, big shout out to Soundtoys, making some of my favorite creative mixing effects. You can try out anything they make for free at soundtoys.com. Since we're just getting nerdy and plugging all the gear, do you have any favorite Soundtoys plugins you've used?
I own them all. I love them all. I use them on every single session. I've bought everything that they make. Before that, I'd bought every single, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but like Wave Mechanics, stuff.
Sure.
And, so I've been a long time lover of all that stuff, for sure.
Yeah, they make good stuff. And it's not actually expensive to get all the Soundtoys stuff. The entire bundle, I think, is like $500.
Yeah.
Compare that to some of the other companies where you add a zero to that to get all of their stuff.
Yeah.
And
I will say, can I point, just like tiny soapbox moment. I miss manufacturers making DSP plugins very much.
That are powered by hardware, so
Yes.
you can offload.
Yes.
And now Universal Audio is doing that. Antelope, I think, to a degree,
Yeah.
kind of started doing that. Is anyone else? There's not a ton. Universal Audio is the big
But
one
I'm
these
going to
days.
specify what I mean is AAX DSP.
Oh, yeah.
I really
yeah.
miss the TDM days where you could track and mix and then track again into your mix session with so little latency. Like I love all
Right.
the plugins. Everybody's got Pro Tools and there's a wide user base and very few people probably like me and you tracking professionally or mixing professionally. But man, I miss those. You know, there's companies that still do it, you know, make DSP.
For whatever reason, the incentives aren't there enough, but it still matters when
Yeah.
you're doing this stuff at particularly at a high level
Yeah.
and you're doing a lot of tracking.
That's it.
It still makes sense, and I'd love to see it incentivized so that would be
Yeah.
the norm again like it once was. Because as powerful as computers, I mean, the argument is computers are so powerful now you don't need as much. But it's like yes and no, because we
Right.
keep on increasing what we expect them to do as they get more powerful,
Right.
and it still becomes a choke point, and also the latency,
The
like
latency,
you said,
that's
particularly
it,
for
yeah.
recording purposes.
I'll
So,
be in the
yeah, that's
middle,
big.
you know, at the end of a massive mix, and I've got crazy routing for, you know, sub mixes and stems and all that stuff, and the latency is insane. And then, which
Yeah.
is fine, it can totally keep up and handle it. It sounds great. I've got great performance. I've got, you know, an HDX2 here, and I do what I can on AX DSP, what's available, and everything else is all, you know, UAD or native. It sounds great. I love all of it, but invariably somebody's like, you know, just today on a piece I'm mixing for a score, the director wants to change this tom fill, you know, and then it's like,
Right.
oh, okay, I got to deactivate everything and you know, tear the whole mix apart just to have or make stems and bring it into a new session or whatever. But I miss the old days where you know, you might pay more for the TDM or AAX DSP plugins, but your latency in a pro, you know, situation for tracking is going to stay super low, and then you can be like, sure, just pop this and record and go for it.
Yep.
But all right, soapbox.
I know what you
done.
mean. Very good. Good stuff. All right. So for any of you gear manufacturers and plugin manufacturers who are listening, there is at least one person who demands that we do this again. And I think there's more than one. All right. Dana, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Where's a good place for people to find you, follow you online,
sure.
all that stuff, if they want to check out more from you?
My website is dananielsen.com. It's DANANIELSEN.com. And on Instagram, I'm at Danafrio, DANAFRIO.
Okay.
And Facebook, I think like something like Dana Nielsen 98 randomly or something like that.
All right.
But
we'll type in Dana Nielsen in whatever social
Yeah.
media channel you like, and I'm sure you get him.
Yeah.
And also make sure you go to sonicscoop.com, follow the newsletter there. You'll get hip to when there's more interviews like this one coming out, or if we hear any cool stories of Dana doing cool stuff and we write about, that's where you find it. And if you want some free stuff, you can check out, I've got a free workshop on mixing called The 5 Habits of Truly Great Mixers, where I interview people who are great at what they do, like Dana, and then I try to find the common threads in all of their approaches. And if you want some of the lessons I've gleaned from doing these kinds of interviews for like a decade now, check out The 5 Habits of Truly Great Mixers at sonicscoop.com/mixhabits. That's sonicscoop.com/mixhabits. Also, if you want a free mastering workshop from me, you can check out sonicscoop.com/mastering101. I see Dana typing this in right now. He wants to rip off other people's
man, I do
style
that
too.
all
Yeah.
day long. I love
Yes.
watching, you know, informative videos and paying for tutorials, and I'm always into like seeing what others are doing and learning new
Good
tricks. and
stuff, man. Constant learning and constant education. That's one of those common themes that is not one of the 5 habits that made it in there, but if we're going to add a 6th, that might be it. So thanks again, Dana.
Thank
I
you,
really
man.
appreciate your time, your insight. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you guys for tuning in and hanging out with us. See you next time.